Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily with Elfrink and Ray Flowers, Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't forget to use the promo code FSD20 for a 20% discount on the products over at fantasyguru.com.
We welcome you into Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by fantasyguru.com. Elfrink and Ray Flowers with you on this Thursday. It is a Thursday where the NFL is giving you more than you bargained for. By rule, every NFL team has to be in at least one primetime game each and every year, whether it's Thursday or Sunday or Monday. Ray, tonight, the NFL gives us a second preview of the Carolina Panthers. A second. They only need to do one a year, but for whatever reason, the NFL said, let's give the public two. And let's give them two in the first 10 weeks of the season. I'd forgotten they played New Orleans, I think, back in week 2. Tonight, Ray, Showdown Central, Carolina on the road at Chicago. This is how you begin an NFL week.
Yeah, and you were also saying before the show their record has been so spot on the last handful of years that they totally deserve this national exposure, right?
Yeah, you only need to show them once, NFL. We don't need. Here's what I was looking at. They are in the midst. They're 1-7. The Panthers are entering tonight. They are in the midst of their 6th straight losing season. This might be the worst of all of them. So it's not like they're trending upwards. They're in a total rebuild. So 6 straight year. In those 6 years, Ray, they're currently on their 5th coach.
Okay.
So they got Frank Wright. They had Matt Rule. They had Ron Rivera. They had Perry Fuel for a few games at the end of one of those seasons. They also had Steve Wilkes, current defensive coordinator for the 40. So 5 coaches in the 6 years. 6 different quarterbacks have led the Panthers in passing. And so, Ray, this goes right to the heart of the matter. How do you win in the NFL? You got to get a quarterback. I know we kind of laugh or giggle and joke about, everything's about the quarterbacks, but it's true. You got to have something stable under center. You think you can name all 6 quarterbacks who have led the Panthers in passing in the last 6 years? This is a difficult one.
I'm going to say no. I want to say Burline and Delhomme, but I know that's too old. Gotcha. Was Cam Newton one of them?
Cam Newton was in the first of the 6 years.
Cam Newton. Boy, it's too early for me.
These are not easy. Don't. But a couple of, obviously this year, number 2.
Yeah, Bryce Young.
Okay, so now you got a third of the list. Think
Geez.
about journeymen.
Yeah, I wanted to say obviously Andy Dalton, but he's this year. God, I'm going to cheat, but not cheat. Okay. I'm going to pull up a list of quarterbacks with no, Let's see.
You're gonna search NFL journeyman quarterbacks.
No, I'm just gonna look at the quarterback list like right now. Like who are the? This is bad. Like I should know this right away. Okay, let's see.
So you got 4 more names. I think 3 of the 4. I know at least 2 of the 4 are still in the NFL. One is actually starting in the NFL for another team. The other guy's a backup. The third guy, gosh, I don't think he's with a team or he's maybe injured right now.
Okay.
And then the 4th guy, you'll never get. You'll never get the 4th guy. Ray, I'll even tell you his first name is my first name, that 4th guy.
Kyle Trask? Who the hell? No, I'm just kidding.
No, not Kyle Trask.
Okay, so I'm on Pro Football Reference, and I just got this year's leaderboard for quarterbacks. So it doesn't. So I'm just rolling through names here to see if it'll help me at all. Geez. Your first name, I don't even remember who that is, Kyle. I'm killing this bit. I'm killing this bit completely. So Sam Darnold's one.
I'll help you.
Sam Darnold,
the guy who is currently starting,
right,
is Baker Mayfield.
Okay, Sam Darnold is one, right?
Sam Darnold's another.
Okay, I saw him. He's right. He's number 65.
So you got 2 more, and these are the 2 most difficult. Although as soon as I say one, you'll be like, oh, yeah, I kind of remember. Maybe not. I don't know. It was 3-4 years
Just go for it. I'm killing the bit.
Teddy Bridgewater.
Oh, geez. Yeah, that's bad.
Well, I'm trying to think. Is he with the team right now?
He's with
I have no idea who he's with. I thought he was maybe injured.
No, what team is he? I wanted him to get traded to Minnesota last.
Yeah.
I'll find it. No, I mentioned that. I'll find him when we're looking. But go ahead.
And then the one that you couldn't get, even with the mention of the first name,
right?
Kyle Allen. Who Trigger Finger Studios in our chat room. He actually got Kyle Allen. I don't know if he looked that up, but He knew
It's
Kyle Allen.
Detroit Lions for Teddy Bridgewater, by the way.
Okay, is he the backup there? No
I
wonder.
proposed he'd be a great trade back to the Vikings so he could return to where he started his career when they, before they got Josh Dobbs. But yeah, that's bad. And not that I am Mr. Know Everything, but the fact that took 4 minutes to figure that out tells you how bad it's been to your initial point, Kyle.
100%. Okay, we are off and rolling, as only we can do it on Fantasy Sports Daily. Kyle Elfrink and Ray Flowers each and every weekday, 11 to noon. Here is the plan for today. Obviously, Thursday night football. We're doing a load of that. Not a load. I don't want to scare off everybody, but we will get you a preview of the Panthers and the Bears. A reminder that our friend Ryan Clifford, who isn't able to join us today, but his column will be up at fantasyguru.com to take a look at the Showdown DFS slate. So make sure you check out that. Obviously, Discord, the NFL room, that's going to be open leading up to tonight. So we'll talk a bit about the Panthers and the Bears. It does not sound at this moment like Justin Fields is going to be out there for the Bears. He is officially listed as doubtful. They'll probably give him another week off. But the fact that the Bears are playing tonight, the fact that we'll probably see Tyson Bagent, who I don't know if he's been as good as Fields, but he's been okay. We will talk about the situation with Justin Fields and where the Bears go from here and how important, the last 6 or 7 games are going to be for Justin Fields. And then that leads us into the idea of the 5th-year option. We'll talk more about this later in the program, but we've got a lot of guys, including Justin Fields, from that 2021 NFL draft class who are coming up on 5th-year options. And that was a draft class with a lot of skill players selected in the first round. A lot of quarterbacks. First 3 picks were all quarterbacks. So we'll talk about the status and take a pulse on all of those guys. NFL injuries, Jamar Chase kind of popping up as a concern heading into the weekend. And then we'll close things down on a Thursday with Ani Sridar, talk a little soccer with him. Game week number 12 of 38 that we have in the English Premier League. So we'll get you a preview with Ani. That, of course, Ray, and I can see there at the bottom, the All In Hoops MVP plan. That sounds like when I go to, I never go here, but we have a sports clips, Ray.
Mm-hmm.
Cut your hair.
Yeah.
That sounds like something they would sell me at the booth, and I'd have to buy like 17 haircuts to get the All In Hoops MVP plan, which I get my haircut quite often. I don't know about Ray Flowers. I do. So I'm often a sucker for these plans, but this is not to get like cheaper haircuts, is this?
It is not. Yeah, there's actually a video at YouTube. So everyone can go over to the YouTube page and watch me for 2 minutes talking about it. It's at youtube.com/@ElitePlusNetwork. And basically what we're doing is it's All In Hoops MVP plan. And you say to yourself, well, Ray, I like basketball, but come on, I'm not paying for that. It's okay if you don't want to just pay for that, because the All In MVP Hoops plan includes NBA, college basketball, NHL, PGA, MMA, soccer, and racing. All of it. All right. So you can head over to fantasyguru.com, click the Join Now tab in the top right corner. You can also, again, watch the video at YouTube. You get a direct link there. Sign up. It's like 50% discount for that thing. You can use the promo code FSD20, FSD20 for that. And we also have a special on our football product too. We just slashed that, so you can get everything for the rest of the 2023 season at half price, or maybe it's a little less than half price as well. So head over to fantasyguru.com, Join Now tab in the top right corner, and use that promo code FSD20. We're blowing it out, Kyle, as we head into the holiday season.
Well, I will say for those DFS players, it can be difficult to win consistently in the NFL or baseball. So many people play those, even basketball, honestly. Now, we give you an edge each and every day. But those other sports, Ray, we cover them from a DFS angle. Like we're going to be talking soccer with Ani Sridar. I know every weekend he puts together a main slate write-up, and he helps people in Discord. NHL, we've got daily write-ups on the DFS slate. College hoops, it's all, and even NASCAR season just ended, but Ray, you talk about this, and those are ways that you can kind of load up on the bucks, because those minor sports or those smaller sports, it's a lot easier if you have a leader, and we can kind of be a leader to kind of send you on the correct path to your build. A lot easier to get some money out of those sports when you play them on a nightly basis.
It's very true. And some people might hear that and be like, well, yeah, but I don't know anything. And that's okay. And we're not telling you to subscribe to something you don't know. But what we're telling you is we have people that do know, and that those people can be very, your participation there can be very lucrative if you know how to do things right. Because, I think you gain an edge with small bits of information here. In football, there's information everywhere. There's millions of analysts. There's millions of people playing. There's these other sports, it's more of a niche thing. And you can have a lot of success. And we even have stories from people like, I didn't know jack about soccer. I signed up and I made 125% this year, whatever it is. So not telling people that's what you should do. You obviously want to know what you're doing. But if you have an interest in those smaller sports, like Kyle says, we cover them here on the show. We cover them on the site. We do DFS. And given that you get all of them together at half price, it's a pretty good deal.
It's a little soccer day, college football. In fact, tomorrow when we get rolling on Friday. Okay, let's dig into the festivities for this Thursday. Obviously, starting with game 1 of 10, Carolina on the road at Chicago. Mentioned Justin Fields, doubtful, probably not going to play. Doesn't sound like DJ Chark is going to be out there for Carolina. It does, Ray, sound like Khalil Herbert is going to be out there for the Chicago Bears. Or excuse me, check that. Does not sound like Herbert, which is a surprise because he'd been practicing all week, which leads me to this question, Ray. Probably going to see a lot of D'Onta Foreman again. We know on the Carolina side of late, it's been a lot of Chuba Hubbard. These are names that like 2 months ago, Ray, we're not getting people excited. You didn't want to be saying, oh, I'm starting Chuba Hubbard this week. But for this week, Ray, I wonder with teams on bye and kind of the way the running back situation is, do you look at D'Onta Foreman and do you look at Chuba Hubbard, the 2 running backs tonight, and say, wow, these are like top 18, top 15 running backs that they're getting work, if nothing else, as they lead into week 10.
Yeah, and it is surprising with Herbert. We thought he would play. Obviously, there was uncertainty, even if he did suit up, what the role would be. They've used Darrington Evans. They've got Roschon Johnson, D'Onta Foreman, who you mentioned. So the expectation now with Herbert, we're hearing from Tom Pelissero he's not playing, so we'll accept that as fact. The situation is Foreman and then Johnson and then Evans. That would be the pecking order, in my opinion. Foreman is basically what he was last week, which was 20 carries for 83 yards. Get in the end zone, you're a top 15 running back, like you said. His involvement in the passing game is minor. So I currently have him at 21st at running back, and I've got Chuba Hubbard at 23. So not top 20, but top 25. And obviously this week with 4 teams on bye and injuries and all that, there are going to be a lot of people starting these guys. And I think in the case of both of them, kind of need the touchdown. There is a line of thought that maybe last week Miles Sanders, who was the guy and then completely vanished from the offense and then seemed to gain ground last week. There's a line of thought, obviously, that this team was prepping for Thursday night football, so they held back on Hubbard a little bit last week to make sure he's a little fresher this week, so maybe his touch count goes back up this week. But I would go Foreman over Hubbard. It's very close, but again, I think both are top 25.
And I'm glad you gave us a reminder of where we are at, Ray. It's Thursday. And Miles Sanders was barely used, and certainly the Bears, you kind of ran through their situation. There are other options here, so I'm a little wary of saying what I'm going to say. But to me, I look at both these teams and both of these quarterbacks. We saw it with Bagent last week with the Bears on the road in New Orleans, and we've seen it kind of with Bryce Young all season, including last week. These guys are prone to mistakes. The more you're throwing with Bagent, the more you're throwing with Bryce Young, the more expected interceptions are to follow. That's been the track record early on for Bagent and all season for Young. I look at both these teams and I'm expecting a slog tonight, Ray, like a 20-16 game where it's a lot of running. And to me, that means that we see a lot of Foreman. We see enough of Johnson. We see a lot of Hubbard. I think Sanders gets more work tonight. Specifically to Hubbard and Foreman, I might have them a bit higher than you. You were saying in the low 20s. I might put them in the mid to high teens just because I think the game plan for both sides will dictate running the football. I think both these guys could have at least 15 touches. You're right on the touchdown aspect, and I can't sit here and predict. I will say Carolina's pretty awful against the run. So I feel good about Foreman. I think in seven of the 8 games this year, they've allowed at least 110 yards rushing. But last week they were better. By far their best effort against opposing runners came last week against Indianapolis, but now the quick turnaround. I'm expecting the Bears to have a pretty good amount of success on the ground tonight. So I do kind of lean in that direction. I just look at both these quarterbacks, Ray, and it's like, I don't want these guys throwing the football 30 times if I'm the head coach here. Because if either of these guys are throwing the football 30 times, Ray, you're probably looking at least multiple interceptions for both these guys, I think.
Yeah, the Panthers, by the way, lead the NFL with a league high 12 rushing scores allowed to the running back, to your point, for the backfield of the Bears. I think that, both these guys, obviously youngsters, both these guys learning the ropes, the NFL level, should either one be starting right now? Okay, but they are. And I think your assessment is accurate that, this is not, if either one of these teams has to throw it 39 times, there's the problem, right? They want to keep it close. They want to grind it out. Neither team wants to make the pace exponentially fast. Neither team wants to run 80 plays tonight. Like, that's not the goal anyone has. So I think that both teams would want to go in with that mindset. At some point you have to pass, right? You can't just run, right? Neither of these teams is good enough to do that. They're not explosive enough to do that. But I think as a game plan, it's very reasonable to think that, let's say we want to throw it 29 times. We want to run it 38 times. Let's go. I think that's the kind of idea they have heading in.
Well, and all that being said, Ray, if you own Cole Kmet, you're starting him. If you own DJ Moore, you're starting him. I think if you own Adam Thielen, you're starting him. I mentioned DJ Chark. For the DFS player, Ray, I could see Jonathan Mingo being pretty popular tonight. Not that he's any good or he's done anything, but he's dirt cheap. And the Bears, we sit here and obviously we focus on the offense and Justin Fields. And, that's what people want to talk about. And we're going to talk about here in a bit. But the defense has been bad this year. Mm-hmm. The Bears defense here, they've allowed the 5th most points. They've allowed the most passing touchdowns in football. The Bears have given up 20 passing touchdowns this year, which is a huge number. They're dead last in third down conversions. So the offense has not been good, but I think it's actually a little bit better than the Bears defense, certainly better than their pass defense. But I think Mingo could be a decent play tonight for a DFS showdown slate.
Yeah, the Week 10 NFL Game Day Matchup Report is available over at fantasyguru.com. It's that article we talk about all the time. I think it's like 14,000 words, 15,000 words, whatever. And as I note in the article, to buttress the points you're making there, Carolina has allowed the 3rd most receptions to running backs. So they bleed out when it comes to dumping the ball off. You mentioned the touchdowns they've allowed. They're actually have allowed 4th most touchdowns to the wide receiver position, not just in total, just to the wide receiver position. They can be beat there. And, the thing with Mingo is he caught 1 pass last week, but he played 70 snaps. He was on the field the whole time. And, he only played 1 fewer snap than Adam Thielen. And he ran the exact same amount of routes as Adam Thielen. So really his emergence is, let's call it what it is. His emergence is being held back by his quarterback because he's on the field as much. He's running the same amount of routes. There is a connection with Thielen and with Young, which makes sense. Thielen's a veteran. He knows how to work the zones and the areas and the quiets. It makes all the sense in the world. But you can't win or have success throwing the football, if Adam Thielen is getting 12 targets every week. It doesn't work. We've seen it doesn't work. So they need to get a guy like Mingo more involved. He's out there. They just got to get him the football.
Mention that Fields mostly unexpected to play. Maybe we get a surprise. But if they're holding out Khalil Herbert still, I would think Justin Fields is still going to be holed out. Ray, a win or a loss, either way, after tonight, you played 10 games. 7 games would be left. I'm going to sit here with the expectation that Fields plays these final 7 games. Okay. How much is on the line for him? I was stunned last draft season when people were like, oh man, do not trade that number 1 pick, Chicago. You got to go after Young or Stroud, whoever you want to do. I applauded the Bears for trading that number 1 overall pick, flipping it to Carolina. They took Bryce Young. The Bears got DJ Moore. They got draft picks. I wasn't giving up on Justin Fields. No way, no how. I feel, Ray, that I'm still not giving up on the guy, but a lot of people are. And this leads to the decision the Bears are going to have to make. And this happens with every rookie quarterback. The first 3 years, you get to prove yourself. At the end of that 3rd year, the NFL, by rule, you got to make a decision. Do we pick up the 5th year option? Now, you might be saying, wait a second, they got the 4th year. Yeah, the 4th year is there. You got a contract, you're set. The 5th year option, if that is picked up, it's a way to keep the earnings down. It's a way to keep the salary cap hit down for a quarterback. So if you got anybody who looks pretty good after 3 years, you pick up that 5th year because it lets you keep him on the roster at a cheaper cost. So this is a really big decision with quarterbacks, right? And it's going to be a big one for the Bears outside of him just burning out and crapping all over the bed. I would argue the Bears have to pick up the 5th-year option with Fields. But I sense a lot of people are looking at this, next 7 or 8 weeks, and it's like do or die time for Justin Fields. Maybe it is, but I would find it so silly for the Bears, a franchise that really has not had a quarterback for 60 years. like they really have not had a long-term answer at quarterback for 50 years at least. And I realize, hey, Jim McMahon won a Super Bowl and Jay Cutler was there for 2 or 3 years, but they have not had a guy who's been the QB for 8 straight years, who's been the end all be all for the offense. They haven't had it. Ray, I think Fields at least has a chance. I can't fathom the Bears dumping him, and not picking up that 5th-year option at the end of this season.
Yeah, the Bears, one of the most storied franchises in football, maybe in sport, right? Really. Jimmy Garoppolo sucks. Everyone thinks he's terrible, and he's got benched for a rookie and all that. He's got 94 touchdown passes in his career. That'd be 3rd all time for the Bears. You look at the Jay Cutler leads this franchise in passing touchdowns with 154. You know who leads this organization in passing yards? Jay Cutler. The greatest quarterback in Bears history is Jay Cutler.
What was it, 4 years? How many years did he actually play for the Bears?
2009 to 2016, technically.
Okay. Longer than I thought.
2009. Sid Luckman's really their best quarterback. Sid Luckman's that's true. But
not Eric Kramer. I thought Eric Kramer was going to show up.
Eric Kramer, he's 6th on the all-time passing yardage list. Listen to that. Jay Cutler, Sid Luckman, Jim Harbaugh. Yeah, that Jim Harbaugh. Yeah. Jim McMahon, Mitch Trubisky, and Eric Kramer.
Mitch Trubisky's a top 5 quarterback for the Bears franchise.
Passing yards in their history of the team.
Wow.
A team that began in 1920. Mitch Trubisky is 5th all time for them in passing yards. That's how bad things are there. And it's really fascinating with Justin Fields. I totally agree with you, Kyle, because, they spent the 11th overall pick on Justin Fields. And have there been struggles? Yes. Has there been coaching problems? Yes. Has there been scheme and offensive problems? Yes. Have there been weapons around Fields to help him? No. Fields is better this year in completion percentage. He's better this year in touchdown percentage. He's better this year in yards per attempt, yards per completion, QB ratio, sack percentage. Everything is improved. And is it great? No. Are there still issues? Yes. But for this organization, to me, it would be crazy to think they would bail on a guy. Now, I'm not saying that if he comes out here and looks like his rookie self the last handful of starts like you're talking about, Kyle, they wouldn't reassess and do something different. But this organization needs to make a stand. They need to make a decision with the coaching staff. They need to make a decision at the quarterback position. You can't keep changing this thing up every 3 or 4 years like they've done for the history of the team.
Let's just say he's level. He's not better. He's not worse. He's just level. Again, it's a no-brainer to me, Ray. You pick up the 5th year. Mm-hmm. If you don't, you're in effect admitting defeat. You're starting the clock over, and you're going to have to invest another high-end draft pick on another quarterback. And I hate this idea, and it's every April, that, oh, man, look at this quarterback field, and these guys, oh, look at his arm, look at his intelligence. Oh, he can break down plays. Wow, he can make plays on his feet. Like every year, it's the same crap with every single college quarterback. And the hit rate is 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5. And we never know which one's going to hit. Some years it's obvious. Oh, Trevor Lawrence, he's going to hit. You know who the guy selected after Trevor Lawrence was in 2000? Zach Wilson. They were neck and neck. Yeah, Lawrence was the easy number 1, but Zach Wilson was number 2. And even Trevor Lawrence, Ray, good, fine. Yeah. I don't think anybody's bailing on the idea that he can be your quarterback for 8 years, but hadn't been great. I would guess, Ray, when that draft pick was made of Trevor Lawrence in 2021, by the time we got to November 9th of 2023, right now, people said, oh, Trevor Lawrence will be a top 5 QB.
They thought he would be what Joe Burrow is. Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
He ain't.
Nope.
He's fine. You can win. I mean, the Jags are what? 6-2, whatever the record is. You can win with them, but is he a difference maker? Ray's he's like more Kirk Cousins than Joe Burrow right now, which again is fine. But it speaks to Ray how, because I'm bringing this up because with the field situation, it's always about, well, who's the next guy? Oh, well, look at this draft pick. It's a waste of your time. If you've got a guy who is showing potential, and I think Fields has shown that, you stick with him. And he's cheap, and he's in the system, and he's had experience. I'm not guaranteeing success, Ray, but I think he's shown enough to where that is obvious to pick up the 5th year with Justin Fields.
You think about it, like Justin Fields, and they say this every broadcast, and you see it if you watch. Justin Fields is 6'3", 230. Okay, you can't one-on-one tackling him is difficult for defensive players. Like defensive backs, good luck. Like he is a big guy. He's mobile, he's fast, he's athletic. When he's moving around, you're like, wow, right? He's got an extremely strong arm. He's got the pieces. Does there need to be refinement and all these things? Yes. But there's a lot that goes on. There's coaching, there's the system, there's who they've surrounded him with talent-wise, all these kind of things. And to think that, the Ravens can win with a similar style of quarterback, Lamar Jackson, right? Similar style. Can win year after year after year, be a playoff contender year after year after year, get double-digit victories year after year after year, and the Bears want to bail on their guy that's very similar. I mean, it just tells you something. And I think that this is it's an organizational thing, because Justin Fields, to me, to date, has been exactly who he should have been expected to be. If that isn't what you wanted, you shouldn't have drafted him. We run into this, like you're saying, with the talent evaluators. Is Justin Fields really appreciably different than what you expected? And I think that he was terrible to start the year. He was absolutely objectively awful to start 2023. And people forget the last 2 games that he played, he threw for 280 yards and 4 touchdowns in each game. Like all of a sudden, it looked like it was happening, and then he got hurt. So I agree with you completely. They should build around Fields. The fact that they aren't, the fact they're considering doing something different, I think speaks to just the disarray the organization is in.
And again, we're not handing out a contract for $240 million. We're not saying that. We're just saying pick up the option.
Yeah.
He gets a raise, but it's nothing significant. It's nothing crazy. And Ray, you look, it got me thinking about 2021. 2021 was a little different from most NFL drafts because we got to see a lot more of skill positions taken in the first round. The first 6 picks, 1 through 6, were all skill positions. Like that never happens in the NFL. The first 3 choices were all quarterbacks. There were 5 wide receivers in the first round. Hell, there were even 2 running backs in the first round. And I started looking at these names, like the 3 quarterbacks, Ray. Trevor Lawrence. And we might get to the point this offseason where the Jaguars rip up the contract, give him a huge deal. We might get there, depending on how they perform, how he performs. The next 2 guys, Ray, Zach Wilson and Trey Lance. What, number 2 and number 3? Now, if I'm the Jets, I ain't picking up a 5th-year option with Zach Wilson. Hell, he may be released this offseason. That could happen. And Trey Lance, Ray, I'll say this. The Cowboys could actually pick up the 5th year.
They could.
Might. I don't know if that's going to happen. But it's amazing. Those 2 guys, Wilson's getting to play every week. We're seeing nothing. Trey Lance is still a mystery to me, and I think to NFL people. And the mystery, Ray, is we just haven't seen enough. And this year we're seeing nothing. He's a backup to Dak Prescott. The Cowboys are hoping they don't have to use him. I applaud the Cowboys for going out and adding Trey Lance on the cheap. But right now, we just don't know with a guy like Trey Lance.
Trey Lance, since 2020, so 2020, 21, 22, and 23, 4 years, he has thrown 140 official passes in college and the pros. That's it. I think that the Cowboys are a very interesting situation because there are rumblings, and Dak Prescott has played much better of late, making that contract push, right? There are rumblings he wants $55 or $60 million a year. And I mean, Jerry Jones pays his guys and all that kind of stuff, but is Dak Prescott a top 3 or 4 quarterback in the NFL? No. Is he worth that money? Well, we can have the arguments about who is or isn't, but that's
I said, what's Prescott? What is he, 31?
Let's look it up.
I mean, Ray, this is obviously, and I don't know if Prescott, you hope, you cross your fingers, but is Prescott a guy who can age into his 30s? I think he could. He would be very immobile. How old is he?
30.
You're 30. So if you're giving him that kind of money, you're betting on him being good at 35, 36. Could be. I could see Dak Prescott being decent enough. And 5 years from now, maybe that's a bargain at $50 million for your quarterback.
Maybe and again, teams have to make these decisions. They're huge decisions. That's I mean, obviously, if they signed this long-term deal, there's no reason for them to keep Trey Lance around, unless Trey Lance will take $800,000 a year, right? I mean, there's no point because they've invested so much there in Dak Prescott. But that's just so much money. Is Dak Prescott a difference maker? No, he's not. And I think, come on, if they're honest, they would tell you that. If you're a Cowboys fan, be honest. He's not a difference maker. Is he good? Sure. Can you win with him? Absolutely. But I think, the idea that we're talking about him making that much money might be a little bit of him being crazy, but it might also just be the state of the quarterback position with all these other, it's like Dak's looking around and be like, you guys want to start Zach Wilson? Have at it. Like, I think there's part of that involved here in the negotiation aspect.
I think when it's all said and done, the Cowboys will be too close to the cap to pick up a fifth-year option. It's kind of like a luxury to pick up on your backup quarterback. So I don't think that happens. I don't think it happens with Zach Wilson. Obviously, with Lawrence, it's either a new contract or picking up the fifth year. Fields, we talked about, I'd pick it up. Mac Jones, right? That's probably not getting picked up in New England. I'd say he's playing either in New England for year number 4, or they're going to move on from Mac Jones. He was the 15th overall selection in that draft. He has not been awful. I'm speaking as a non-Patriot fan. I know to Patriot fans he sucks, but he just hasn't shown enough, Ray. Like, Mac Jones looks a lot more like a future backup than a future starter in this league.
Yeah, and don't forget as well that the Niners, until like the day of the draft, were debating Trey Lance or Mac Jones. Who knows how things would have turned out, right? If that had gone differently. But Mac Jones, to me, I think you said it well. I think to me, he's Nick Foles. He's the young Nick Foles, right? He's a guy that you can win with if you get him and you give him, surround him, and you put him in the right spot and all that, and he can make some plays. But I know that when I see Mac Jones, I see a lot of whining. I see a lot of yelling. I see a lot of finger pointing, whether it's at the refs or his teammates or the coaches. There's a lot of that going on. And obviously things aren't going as expected in New England. But yeah, he's just not – he hasn't been awful, like you said. And I know the perception is he's awful. Hasn't been awful. Has he been good? Absolutely not.
He is held to a high standard, too. Yeah. When you replace Tom Brady and you still have Bill Belichick and you've had 20 years of winning. He's in a little different spot than Trevor Lawrence going to Jacksonville. Running backs, Ray, Najee Harris and Travis Etienne. That's a difficult one because, again, paying running backs, I could see Pittsburgh not picking up Najee Harris's 5th year. Jacksonville, maybe it depends on the salary cap and how they maneuver guys and what Lawrence gets and the pay. Etienne I could see, but Najee Harris would be kind of a difficult one. Pittsburgh may say, oh, we'll keep him for a 4th year, sure, but after that, we'll let him walk as a free agent.
There have been a lot of disappointed folks because of Najee Harris's performance. My hands up. I was backing Najee Harris. We told everyone that at fantasyguru.com. Hasn't worked out. Okay. He and Warren have basically drawn themselves to an even playing field at this point in the PPR setup. Najee's starting to trend, right? The workload's starting to go up. They're starting to utilize him little bit differently, a little more effectively, I think. It's really fascinating. Jeff Mans brought this up on the Elite Sports Show yesterday. I'm with him every Wednesday. He's there Monday through Friday on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern time. And we went through the running backs real quickly. And he said, you know who leads? This is interesting. You know who leads the NFL in broken tackles? Travis Etienne. You know who's second in the NFL in broken tackles? Najee Harris. And you say to yourself, well, okay, Najee Harris is also 6th in the NFL in yards after contact. So he's not Derrick Henry. But, guess what? He has a better yards after contact than Derrick Henry this year. Or, excuse me, it's the same. So there are pieces of Harris's performance, even in the general, sense of he's been disappointing, that still point to an effective running back and a guy that, look, if you give him some help, he can be very effective. It's tough to know what teams are going to do at the running back position, though, to your point, Kyle. And, the Steelers have a tradition of having success at that position, kind of whoever's back there. It doesn't really matter, right? So that probably pays into it a little bit, too.
It's hard to get that 5th year option picked up. It really is as a running back. Maybe with Etienne, but, hey, if they have other issues or they're up against the cap, maybe not. At wide receiver in that 2021 draft, Kadarius Toney, Rashad Bateman. Toney went 20th, Bateman 27th. I don't think there's a pickup on those. But, Ray, there could be some big money this offseason on 3 other receivers: Jamar Chase, Jaylen Waddle, DeVonta Smith. Those 3 guys all went in top 11. Chase was 5, Waddle 6, DeVonta Smith was 10. Those guys could all be due some massive, massive deals. And that's, fifth-year option totally getting picked up. But those guys could kind of reset the market for wide receivers. Justin Jefferson, who was not in this class, but he's another guy. This past offseason, Ray, the quarterbacks were getting their money. Lamar Jackson, Burrow, and Herbert. This offseason, Ray, big bucks on wide receivers. And I think Jefferson, Chase, Waddle, DeVonta Smith, all those guys probably getting giant contracts with their current teams.
Yeah, I think they are. They're so important to their organizations, and they're so good at what they do. I think, to me, the most fascinating one will be Jamar Chase, because the Bengals just gave $275 million to Joe Burrow, right? And that Burrow, they need Jamar Chase there or all hell's going to break loose, right? So that's the plan, to bring these two guys in. Have we seen, I don't know, maybe you remember, Kyle, have we seen a team where they're paying their top wideout $30 million and their quarterback $55 million? Have we seen that?
We may see two, Ray, because Jaylen hurts alongside DeVonta Smith and A.J. Brown. I mean,
A.J. Brown, yeah.
This is how you keep dynasties from happening.
Yeah, it's really tough. It's really tough. So, the Bengals will sign Jamar Chase. It's a question of what does that look like? Waddle, I think Waddle's interesting too, because Waddle's, is he a one? For some teams, he would be a one. Is he more of a two? Maybe, right? And it's, you can't compare him to Tyreek Hill, but he's more of a chain mover and more of a sure-handed kind of guy. He's not necessarily a blazer in a different offense. He'd be probably more stagnant. They do a great job moving him around. He's dealt with some injuries in his career, nothing major, but some bumps and bruises. So I'll be fascinated to see too as well what the Dolphins do there, because he's going to want to get paid as a wide receiver one, and they might want to pay him as a wide receiver too.
There is one other skill position player from this draft class that will be going into the offseason wondering about a fifth-year option. Kyle Pitts. This was his draft class, right? So, here's what I'm going to bet on, whether it's right or wrong. The Falcons will sign him to a big deal, Ray, and never use him. They're just going to chain Kyle Pitts to Arthur Smith and the Atlanta Falcons franchise, and he'll stay in Atlanta and will continue to rue what could have been if he actually went to a team that would make use of Kyle Pitts.
Jonnu Smith has more touches inside the 10-yard line than Bijan Robinson. Okay. They have basically created an offense where it's, three guys catching passes. It's London, Smith, and Pitts. It's in that order too. London, Smith, and Pitts. And Pitts is still, you and I, we talked about him before he came out of college, Kyle, and you were amongst the vocal majority of people that said, this guy, wow, right? You and I talked about it over and over again before the draft. None of that's changed. Mm-hmm. They just don't use them.
Yeah.
I mean, they just don't. And it's fascinating to see they invested such high draft pick in a guy that everyone knows can be a difference-making player at his position. And for some reason, they just don't give him the damn football. That will be fascinating to see what they try to pay him. Because, the players don't have much control here with this stuff. But if you're Kyle Pitts, unless you enjoy Atlanta and your teammates and the area, why would you sign that?
Yeah.
Get the hell out of there. Your career is wasting away as this team doesn't use it.
At the very least, they'll pick up the fifth-year option and make him play.
And then they might do the franchise thing, and the poor guy's going to be stuck in limbo for half his career and never get a chance to be who he is.
Poor Kyle Pitts. Maybe things are changing in Atlanta, because Arthur Smith, if you missed it, what I see, he shaved off his silly-looking mustache. And he claimed he did it at 4 a.m. some morning. He just couldn't take it anymore. I don't know, Ray. I can't take Arthur Smith. That mustache makes me want to laugh instead of support him. I think I said it right here on the show. I said, how do you take that guy seriously in the locker room? He's a clown-looking guy. And the team is going nowhere. For a guy who was hired, Ray, to fix an offense and was given all this talent, and they've invested all these picks, quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight end. No other team's doing this, by the way. No other team, Ray, in the last 3 years has invested as much draft capital in their offense than the Falcons. And I hate to say they've swung and missed, but they're not being used correctly, are they? It's unfair to all four players, Robinson, Ritter, London, and Pitts, to say, oh, they're the problem. I just can't say they're the problem. The team's the problem. And all these guys were drafted pretty early. I know Ritter wasn't a first-round pick, but the Falcons had a lot of quarterbacks they could have taken at that spot, and they took Ritter. This franchise and front office has kind of screwed the pooch on this whole thing.
By the way, I think I shaved my mustache off at like 9:45 at night, so I didn't quite go Arthur Smith on everyone. But yeah, it's bewildering. I think that's the right term with the Falcons, because your point is not even one that needs to be expanded upon. You spent top 5 picks on these guys in the draft, like what, and then you don't use them. And it's the Falcons and the Titans are the same team, right? They keep games close and they win games. It's ugly, it's messy. They're never really blown out. They're never really blowing someone else out. I don't, for the life of me, understand why this organization did what they did. We were talking about the Bears and the uncertainty and how the Falcons are way worse, because, like you said, they had the opportunity to build their franchise in this direction or that direction. They went the offensive direction. They've got a coaching staff that doesn't give a damn about offense. I mean, they'd probably put you in the backfield if you were on the team, because we want to diversify and make sure everyone doesn't get tired. They have no idea what they're doing. And they spent all that draft capital. It's just crazy.
Yeah, they're 25th in scoring, by the way. And I know everybody thinks that's because of the quarterback. No, there's some coaching that's missing there. I will still say, Atlanta's making the playoffs, Ray.
They very well could. It's possible.
This week they're in Arizona. Now, they're only favored by 1.5, but you got to win that game. Okay, that's a road game. Arizona sucks. Even with Kyler Murray back, they suck. They have New Orleans twice. They have the Bucks at home. They go to Carolina, and then they go to Chicago. I mean, these are lousy teams. They go to the Jets, and they have a home game against the Colts. That's the schedule. Arizona, New Orleans twice, the Jets, the Bucks, the Panthers, the Colts, and the Bears. That's one of the easiest schedules you could ever ask for. And if they don't make the playoffs, I don't care if they miss out. If they don't make the playoffs, Ray, Arthur Smith should be fired before they even get on the plane after that game in New Orleans at the end of the season. Because this schedule is so set up for the postseason, and if they can't pull it off, that's embarrassing for the Falcons.
Don't disagree, and I don't think you're going to get really anyone at fantasyguru.com to disagree. Jeff Mans has blasted this coaching staff. I think it's obvious. Their articles are there. You can see the tension in the press room now, because they're asking questions they should be asking, and he's like talking about other things. And so yeah, that organization is kind of at that tipping point, and it's another organization. They have to make a decision of how their future is going to be, or their future is going to be like the past, and it's not going to be good.
And although I've got no faith in this coaching staff and how they're going to use these talents, again, if you're a gambling man or somebody who likes to make wagers, I need to check this. Falcons, because they're 4-5 right now. This team's under 500. But I got to check to make the playoffs, what you can get the Falcons at. Now, I have been pushing the Falcons as a playoff team since last December at the end of the season. Okay. I was calling for them to make the playoffs. So if you go to futures, right now, this is at DraftKings.
They've got Tyler Heineke under center now too, Kyle, which certainly boosts their odds of playoff aspirations.
To make the playoffs, plus 115. I was hoping for like plus 130.
Or 150 or something.
Yeah, 115 I can take. Hey, they're seeing the same thing I am. This schedule is cake. If you can't make the postseason with this schedule, fire the whole staff. The whole stinking staff needs to be fired. Quickly, NFL news and notes. Jamar Chase, we were just talking about him. Ray back injury, didn't practice yesterday. We'll see today, but if he misses today, we're going to have some questions, I think, for Chase going into the weekend.
Yeah, my thought at this point in time is he plays, but we'll have to see. I mean, this is an organization that we just talked about. He's a building block now and in the future. The offense is rolling. Maybe they think they can get by. They do have Tyler Boyd, obviously, who could step up. Not the same style of player, but still step up. But I would anticipate Chase playing. But again, it's early. It's a Thursday. So we'll have to wait and see what the team says with his back.
Well, and this involves connecting dots. But he's coming off a game where he was silent. Mm-hmm. And I just wonder if the back was an issue in that game. And now they're saying, okay, maybe we need to take a week off. So I'm a little bit concerned with Chase. Kenneth Walker, DNP on Wednesday, chest, as well as Jackson Smith and Jigba. Both those Seahawks with a hip. Seahawks do this every week, so we'll just have to see as we get deeper into Thursday and Friday. Josh Downs still out with a knee. Damian Pierce with an ankle. Amari DeMarcado with a toe. Worth noting, Ray, James Conner, I guess there's at least a shot he maybe plays in week 10. So he and Murray could be back for the Cardinals.
And that's huge for the offense. I'm not saying they're going to win games. They're going to be good. But adding Kyler Murray back is huge. adding Connor back is huge. That would at least give them a chance to move the ball and create some fantasy excitement, even if the team doesn't have any.
Of course, Arizona hosting Atlanta. It does sound like Drake London has a shot, pretty good shot at playing this week. He did return to practice, missed last week with the groin injury, but he was back at practice. Some names limited on Wednesday: T. Higgins, hamstring; Nico Collins with a calf; and Curtis Samuel with a toe. Also, Josh Palmer. Ray, I really think there's no reason to hold on to this guy. I think I said it earlier in the week. Now we're hearing he could be out for the season with this knee sprain. Even if he isn't, we're in crunch time in fantasy circles. You got to get guys who are playing and guys who have status in terms of being active. We don't have that with Joshua Palmer. And, it sucks for him. It sucks for the Chargers. They go through this every year. But it wouldn't surprise at all if Palmer is kind of finished for the season.
Yeah, don't forget, we still have 4 teams on bye in week 11. We've got, 5 in week 13. Oof. We've got multiple teams in week 14. Like, there's still bye weeks ahead of us, in addition to all the injuries and all that. So, yeah, I agree with you. If you have an IL spot, totally different. If you don't, I don't see much of a reason to hold on to Palmer right now.
Quentin Johnston, here's your chance, man. Make a run. And Ray, if that were a simple question, hey, I can drop Palmer and pick up Johnston, I'd do it. And Johnston's done zilch this year. Mm-hmm. But Ray, purely off opportunity and, pedigree, if you will, where he was drafted, I'd drop Palmer for a guy like Johnson right now.
Yeah, and I had the exact question over in the Discord at fantasyguru.com. Yeah, I think it's the move you make. And the fact is that he was drafted to fill a role, Quentin Johnston. He's got skills. He can stretch the field. He's a big guy. He's unproven. He hasn't done anything, but his snap count is up. His route participation is increasing. And frankly, they're not going to be many games where they throw the ball 30 times and shut it down offensively. So, yeah, he is someone that should be added, though expectations have to be kept in check for now.
Expectations in check. That leads us to Tommy DeVito. I said 2 weeks ago, very incorrectly, that I was done talking about this guy. We wouldn't mention his name ever again on the pod. Well, Ray, he's now starting again. He is the starter for the Giants for their road trip to Dallas. They are like a 17-point underdog for that game in Big D.
Yeah, in my Dynasty League, I lost Daniel Jones to injury. I lost Justin Fields to injury. I had to turn to Brian Hoyer for a 1-week fill-in. Danny DeVito, I had to now spend 15% of my budget to make sure I got I had to. Money. We're in a Dynasty League. There's not a single quarterback anywhere. I'm trying to make a trade for Badgett because I have Justin Fields and
go get Kyle Allen, Ray. Go get Kyle.
It's disastrous. So I'm just hoping. My team's 6-3. It's going well. I need just someone to give me 10 points, I guess. But that's. I hope he gets 10 points. That's
rough. That's rough. Okay, let's switch gears from the NFL. Let's talk some English Premier League. We do it every Thursday leading into the new week. And we do it with our man, Ani Sridar, who covers the soccer scene at fantasyguru.com each and every weekend. He breaks down the main slate, which, let's see, Saturday morning, the 10 o'clock games, we have 3 of them. Should note on Sunday morning, there are 4 games at 9 o'clock as we look at a full slate. Ani, it is a pleasure to get you back on Fantasy Sports Daily. How are things going for you today?
Going well, Kyle. Thanks for having me again. It was a weird game week 11, but I still finished above the average.
Really?
But it was very low. 33 points for me in game week 11.
Yeah, it was more than weird, Ani. It sucked last week. It was terrible. I think I can't recall a worst week. And I've been playing this for about a half decade, but I think I had 26 points. I mean, the average was, maybe you have it in front of you, was it like 32?
32, yeah, and I finished with 33, so just above the average.
Well, and to speak to that, I also saw a number, ownership is always important. If you look at the top, I think it was 38 players for ownership. There's 38 guys who have ownership numbers over 10%. Only 3 of those 38 in game week 11 last week scored at least 6 points, which is just pitiful for guys who are owned that much. And of course, the biggest was like, we got blanks from Erling Haaland and Mo Salah, which, people like to react and they like to blow things up. I look at it and say, hey, it was an off week for everybody. Let it slide. If your big game guys didn't produce, I'm still rolling with them this week. Or are you switching out any of your highly owned or expensive players this week?
The only guy I might be taking out is honestly Son from Tottenham with this injury to Madison and, the suspensions to Romero and Udogie, Van de Ven. Tottenham might be slipping here. It was a rough one against Chelsea for them on Monday. As a Chelsea fan, it was quite the result for me. And if you're a Nico Jackson manager who's still been holding on, it was a great result. But Son for Saka looks like the switch I'm going to be making this week.
Yeah, and Tottenham is the first game this week. And lock this weekend is at 6 a.m. Eastern on Saturday. Tottenham is taking on Wolves. That's a 7:30 kickoff. We may find out Madison. I mean, people are going to have to wake up early if you really care about this stuff. But Ani, we should note, sometimes being on X or on Twitter, you can get this information before lock. You know, the rosters or the starting 11 won't be set for Tottenham until 6:30, which is 30 minutes after we have to lock our fantasy rosters. But there's a slight chance we get that Madison news. And you're right. I think if we hear he's out, Son is kind of a sell for me as well.
Yeah, they've been a dynamic duo this year, and they're directly impacted by one another. So I'm hoping we get the news tomorrow. If Big Ange could come out and let us know if Madison's not going to be playing. I did see he has been called up for the international break by England. Maybe they don't play him this weekend, so he can give it a go for England in their final Euro qualifiers. But yeah, Tottenham a little bit on the decline for me here.
Glad you brought that up. International teams have got to be. We got an international break after this weekend, so teams have to say who they're calling up. And what you just said with Madison, I think Callum Wilson was also called up by England. So we're always looking at tea leaves and trying to guesstimate here, Ani, with, well, if he's called up by the international team, well, that probably means he plays next week, not a long-term injury. So, okay, maybe he can play in this week. And that is one feature of this sport, Fantasy Premier League, that is very difficult to kind of figure out. In the NFL, people complain all the time about injuries and who's in, who's out. Ani, the NFL at least gives us information, and we feel pretty good about the reporting. If you're trying to guess on where these players actually stand in the English Premier League, man, it's so difficult. We get press conferences, but Ani, these guys just don't give us a whole lot of information.
Yeah, they play their cards pretty close to the chest. But one thing we do know is that, these club managers don't really care about these players going to international break, right? They just want to get the most run out of them for their club because their jobs aren't associated with how Callum Wilson does for England. It's how Callum Wilson does for Newcastle. So one thing we can definitely count on is these club managers, if they're even 75% healthy, if they don't have Champions League or Europa League, then they'll definitely give it a go here this weekend.
Well, and this segues to Man City. If you look at game week 11, one of the major hits last week was Jeremy Doku, midfielder. What's he run? 6.6 million. He had 22 points. He had a goal. He had 4 assists. He got 3 bonus points. He's the most bought player this week. Everybody's jumping in. I still look at it and hesitate, Ani. It was great last week, but we know how Pep works, man. There is nothing settled with Jeremy Doku or anybody in this midfield. When you look at Man City, it changes game by game, match by match, week by week. I think it's a dangerous ad even after the success of last week.
Yeah, we've been talking about it all year, the rotations that Pep makes. In the midweek, they played young boys in the Champions League. Doku didn't start. Alvarez didn't start. We saw Foden, Grealish, and Haaland all start up top with, kind of a midfield with Nunez and Kovacic starting. So maybe Doku and Alvarez get to start this weekend against Chelsea since they're pretty well rested, I would assume, in that comfortable victory. But they should roll against Chelsea. Even after Chelsea went up 2 men against Tottenham, they did not look like a really good side. So this should be a pretty good victory for them. It's not. I'm not making it a priority to add a guy like Doku, to be honest. But especially with I like to save my double free transfers for after the international break in the event there are injuries that come about. But I might be using both this week, but it's not on Jeremy Doku.
Well, and this furthers the point with Man City. They're top of the table. They're 3-time defending champs. It's like incredible what they're doing. And in years past, Ani, it's like most weeks, max out your Man City assets. Get 3 guys from Man City.
Yeah.
Erling Haaland, pretty well everybody has him, despite the quote-unquote letdown season, but that's one guy. I don't have a second or a third guy with Man City, and maybe a couple of weeks I've had a second guy, but it's kind of wild to look at a team that's still doing what they do. But me at least, and for a majority, I feel like we only have one Man City. Are you rolling with 2 or 3? Should we try to get 3? I still think it's so unsettled with that squad and playing the guessing game that I've only had one all season, and I don't necessarily foresee it changing in the next few weeks.
Yeah, I've only got Erling Haaland in my lineup. The teams that I've doubled up on and will double up on here this game week is Newcastle, Villa, and Brighton are the 3 teams that I've got more than one piece on.
Okay, Newcastle, Villa, and Brighton. Who's the double up in Brighton? Who you jumping on there?
I've got Mitoma and Pedro. I haven't let these guys go. They've got the best matchup on the week against Sheffield United. This is a great get-right spot for Brighton. Get their offense back on track. I'll definitely be betting on this as well. Take Brighton spread and take the Brighton team total. Both are great value this weekend.
I was talking to you before the visit, and you claimed, hey, I got a surprise call. Got a surprise call on defense. Give us that. So is this going to be an official transfer for you this week?
Oh, yeah, this is definitely in. And we talked about the injuries and, suspensions. And a big one is Dan Burn for Newcastle. And something we saw in the midweek for Newcastle's Champions League game. And I guess it's not a surprise because it might be pretty popular amongst people following Fantasy Premier League. And that's Tino Livramento, the defenseman for Newcastle. 4.3 mil, and it's one of those guys we hinted on earlier in the year playing out of position. Eddie Howe had him playing a right wing, so we've got a defender who's playing in an attacking position. That's someone we have to get in our lineups.
Newcastle's at Bournemouth. That's the last kickoff on Saturday at 12:30. You mentioned him being cheap. I saw Man U, who we've picked on the offense sucks, but defensively, somehow, some way, like all 4 guys they started on the back line last week were sub 5. There are some other guys that are very cheap. If you want to, spotlight a strategy, that could be one, Ani, of going really cheap on the back line. There are a lot of guys sub 5. I don't know if I'm comfortable with a collection of guys sub 5, but that is one manner of people saying, hey, I'm going to go cheap on the back and spend a lot of money in my midfield, because the midfield has a load of very good options, like between 6 and 8 million. And if you go really cheap on your back line, you avoid Trippier, you avoid Alexander-Arnold, you could load it up in the midfield still, and also still have Erling Haaland up front.
Yeah, 2 out of the 3 defenders I'm rolling with this week are going to be sub 5. I've got Tino Livramento at 4.3. I've got Tsimikas for Liverpool at 4.6. And the only guy I'm going to have that's above 5, and it's not even that much, that's Ben White. I'm going to get him at 5. I think it's like 7 or 6, 5.7. And Arsenal have a great matchup against Burnley at home. Should be a great clean sheet opportunity for them too. So, I'm going pretty cheap on defense, as you mentioned.
Yes, the issue with Arsenal, though, is Odegaard still didn't play midweek. I know people are still holding on to him, and he's a big fat 0, the last few weeks out. Saka limped off midweek. Nketiah didn't play midweek. Now, Mikel Arteta is a disciple of Pep Guardiola, and he seems to be playing a lot of the same games with the starting 11 in Arsenal. Like, they've got Burnley this week. You're right. Great matchup, 10 a.m. on Saturday. Good luck guessing as to the 11 that the Gunners are going to roll out.
Yeah, I'm sure Havertz will draw a start. Trossard will draw a start. If Saka's even 75% healthy, I don't think they can afford to really bench Saka in this matchup. But Ben White's going to be there. He's one of the guys who's actually healthy. He's someone who we could see coming up the pitch, a threat on corner kicks as well. So I'm confident having Ben White and Saka, to be honest, in my lineup this week. One of the few teams I'm going to have multiple pieces in for this game.
Let me conclude with this guy or that guy. Midfield. We talked about all the options there. Jared Bowen of West Ham, 7.4. Or Brian Mbeumo of Bournemouth, or Brentford, I should say, sitting at 6.8. You've been an Mbeumo guy most of the season. Is he still the choice if you can have either of those 2 guys, Bowen or Mbeumo?
We're going to go for value here, right? And Mbeumo being cheaper is a way that I'm going to go, just because he's got the monopoly on that Brentford attack. With West Ham, we could see Kudus have an impact, Mikel Antonio have an impact there. James Ward-Prowse, he's on set pieces for them. Well, Mbeumo's on set pieces. He's on penalties. He's the main guy. So I'm going to go with the cheaper, but a safer floor with Brian Mbeumo.
We got 5 games on Saturday, 5 on Sunday. So a traditional look to the week. Lock Saturday morning at 6 a.m. Eastern. So probably want to do it Friday night is the plan. Coming up on Friday, all those coaches' press conferences. We may get information. We usually don't. It's just a lot of smoke and mirrors with these guys, but we'll see. Follow Ani in Discord. Of course, right up Saturday morning, I guess, for the main slate.
Yep, you got it.
Okay, that'll be at 10 a.m. Burnley Arsenal, Everton Palace, Luton Town is at Man United. Ani, a pleasure, man. Great stuff. We'll talk next week, or maybe not next week. We got an international break, so probably 2 weeks from now we'll visit with you again, okay?
You got it, Kyle. Have a good one.
That is the man, Ani Sridar, giving us the edge and giving us the insight into maybe what you should be looking at in EPL for this week. I have still held off on my transfer, but I will be making that probably in the next 24 hours. And again, for DFS players, that column that Ani puts out, strictly for that 10 a.m. set of 3 games that we've got. And as Ray noted, you don't have to be like an expert like Ani to do well on those DFS slates. There are angles to play and edges to be had. Ray, tonight, of course, DFS on Thursday night. We recommend everybody check out Ryan Clifford's column. I know you'll probably be in there to help people with lineup decisions and such. And tomorrow we'll recap everything that no doubt will be an exciting matchup between the Panthers and the Bears. But we'll also do some more football. I think our friend Tyler Beaker stopping in on the program tomorrow.
Nice. We haven't had Tyler in the new iteration here, so that'll be nice. You obviously can read his work, my work, see Kyle, all of us over at fantasyguru.com. Use that promo code FSD20. You see it there. Obviously follow our work. We just added, by the way, we added Pandora and Google Podcasts yesterday.
Oh.
So if you want to listen that way, you can search Fantasy Sports Daily there. We've already got Spotify and Apple iTunes. Go to the YouTube page, youtube.com/@ElitePlusNetwork, and you can find links to all the places you can hear the show in addition to watching it on YouTube.
Are we on the dark web yet, Ray? Have you managed to get us onto the illegal side of the internet?
Kyle, I know people who stole car stereos that I installed for them. So the answer to your question is yes.
We're everywhere. I've never done a program or, a little podcast where like there's places I'm being heard that I don't even know where I'm being heard. Like,
Bangladesh, someone could be listening to you right now, Kyle. Who knows?
Yeah, I got to watch what I do a little more. You're with all these, channels that we're on. I'm bound to offend some people, Ray. So I don't know if I agree with all this, but hey, it's 2023. You got to be everywhere. We will be back tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern. That's the live get together. YouTube, X, Facebook, and then of course, if you ever miss us, Ray was just talking about the audio podcast that can be immediately downloaded into your folder onto your phone. You can listen right away. Obviously, if you want to see us, which everybody does. Even today, Ray's getting compliments about what was this? The Optimus Prime Lego?
Yeah, or my shoulder. That thing that took a whole afternoon to put together. That's not easy. That's hours of work. But yeah, that's
Does
the
it
Optimus
fold
Prime.
into the rig?
Yep. It
Very
doesn't come with the back. It's just the Optimus Prime. But yes, he can fold into the rig and roll around. But I have him behind me there, obviously, in
That's
robot
impressive.
form.
Very nice.
Yeah.
More Lego talk to come probably throughout the coming weeks. I'm a big Lego guy. I got to figure out what Lego unit I'm picking up for Christmas. Every year I try to get a new one. So I got to do some work on that and talk to Santa. Ray, enjoy the night. Hope you can survive all things Carolina, Chicago. Tomorrow, NFL with Tyler. Do some college football as well. Whatever else is happening, we'll talk about it. But take care, okay, Ray?
You got it, Kyle. Always a pleasure.
That'll do it for us. You have been watching and certainly enjoying Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by fantasyguru.com. We'll catch up with you on Friday.